And welcome back, everyone. We are here with the championship matches of this Wide League Finals. Now, of course, we're unable to get the actual championship match, so we have instead Scarlet again here for the 3rd and 4th place matchup against SG. It's going to be, or KyogreSG, it's going to be a really, really interesting match here. I think that these two have faced off somewhere in the tournament before, so it should be interesting to see how they adjust here. But I'm joined, of course, by Rolla Costa. How you doing, Rolla?
I'm still good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. It's been a fantastic tournament so far, and it looks like we're at team preview, so we'll go ahead and transition on over there and check out what everyone's bringing. Of course, we've seen a lot of what Scarlet's had here with the Kingambit, the Rotom, Grimmsnarl, that Gengar that just absolutely nails every cursed body that it wants to. And then there's been a lot here said about Kyogre's teams. Kyogre's done very, very well this tournament. So interesting to see these leads here. It looks like it's going to be Annihilate Grimmsnarl and Gengar Talonflame for Scarlet.
Yeah, all right. Pretty interesting stuff. Annihilate is a really scary Pokemon. The bulk ups, the boosting power of Rage Fist every time you get hit. I think it can get up to like 250 base power. Which is just absolutely insane. And then obviously having stuff like Gengar to set up screens and help out its bulk. Gengar, not a very bulky Pokemon, which is why it's very commonly used with the Focus Sash. So it'll be interesting to see what both these players go for.
How this turn shakes out. Obviously, Talonflame able to kind of set up those tailwinds and put that Gengar in a good spot here. It looks like the Terastallization is going to be right off the bat. Looks like it's going for Scarlet. Scarlet going to go for that. We've seen it earlier in the tournament. This Flying Terra type Flying Terra type. So the Brave Bird on this Talonflame is absolutely a menace to watch out for, especially for a fighting type like that Annihilate. But the Terastallization also going off for that Annihilate right there as well, possibly able to mitigate that flying type weakness. It goes straight into a fire type. It's a common type that it tends to like to go for in this meta. Brave Bird gonna fire off this Talonflame to get that Gale Wings boost to make sure it goes off with priority, hitting into that Annihilate, getting it below 50% HP. Gonna take some critical recoil damage there as the Thunder Wave fires off into that Gengar. Critical paralysis here. Gengar usually typically a pretty fast mon, not going to be that fast anymore with that paralysis. Rage Fist firing off that Annihilate into likely the Gengar, and it does, leaving it right on its Focus Sash. We've seen so many times before. See, I don't think the Cursed Body can actually go off. Well, it might be able to now that... Well, Sludge Bomb, anyway, is going to go off into the Grimmsnarl, leave it with just a sliver of HP. Very, very interesting turn one we've got here.
And we've got leftovers on the Annihilate. A lot of really cool stuff going off there. One, fire Terrasla on the Annihilate to prevent it from getting burned or anything like that. And the other really cool thing is that because Gale Wings made Brave Bird priority, it was going to go before any potential reflect that the Gengar or that the Grimmsnarl could have set up.
Yeah.
So that damage was always guaranteed, and it was a lot of very, very valuable damage. Now it's kind of a tricky position where, yes, Annihilate can KO the Gengar, but there's still the threat of Talonflame. Another big Brave Bird like that is going to hurt a lot. But Gale Wings is no longer priority because Talonflame is no longer at full health, which means that a Reflect could be set up and allow Annihilate to exist a bit longer.
And we see Grimmsnarl being withdrawn for Kyogre's side, and out in its place is going to be that Garganacl, an absolute impressive wall we've seen in this meta. Protect going off for Annihilate, going to keep it safe for one more turn. Brave Bird firing off that Talonflame. Looks like it's going to be able to connect, so it's going into that Garganacl, and Garganacl able to take that very well. Just a tiny little chunk of its health and delivering a little bit of punishment back with Rocky Helmet. Sludge Bob going to fire off into that Gengar, but it's not doing anything against that protected Annihilate. Very interesting plays here.
Yeah, really solid defensive play. I think that kind of pretty much guaranteed that not too much damage would have been taken. You know, even if Gengar went for a Shadow Ball or something into the Garganacl, it wouldn't have done that much because Salt Cure reduces the amount of ghost damage done to it. Talonflame obviously can't do anything to touch it. Now you could just go for something like a Salt Cure into the Talonflame. Maybe switch out the Annihilate, sack the Grimmsnarl if you don't think that you're going to use it anymore, or sack the Annihilate if you don't feel like it's necessary. But it can pick off that Gengar later in the game, which would be a good idea to save it.
Yep, and that's exactly what we see here. Grimmsnarl going to come in for that Annihilate. Tailwind going off for this Talonflame here. Sludge Bomb going to fire off into that Grimmsnarl. It's going to be able to take it out. So a fair sack here on Kyogre's side, but of course that Garganacl still a real big threat here as the Salt Cure goes off into that Talonflame, leaving it just 9% health. That Salt Cure might be able to take it out right at the end of this turn here, and it looks like it will. So now the Terastallization lost on Scarlet's side a little bit of momentum as well.
Yeah, it's salty, that's for sure. Yeah, the really good use of a Tailwind though. Trying to make sure that your Gengar is able to pick off the Annihilate. Now the Gengar, while paralyzed, is still a little scary because it is very fast. Garganacl has the ability to start going up for, you know, your classic Iron Defense and things like that. King Gambit is here, which means that it can no longer Terastallize because that was used up by the Talonflame, which means it is easy pickings for the Annihilate and potentially a Body Press from the Garganacl. And also Meowscarada can threaten something like a Sucker Punch into this 1 HP Gengar to finish it off. So maybe something like a Sucker Punch and an Iron Defense is what we see next to try and set up for the end game. But
looks like Gengar's actually not going to move at all, getting that paralysis off. Iron Head firing off of Kingambit into that Meowscarada. Body Press firing into that Kingambit, leaving it without 16 HP as the Trick Room fires off for Meowscarada. Typically a fast Mon, but still having access to that Trick Room means that now Garganacl is the priority Mon on the field. Very, very interesting turn here, and a lot of momentum gained back for Kyogre.
Yeah, that was a honestly really good turn for Gengar to get paralyzed, especially if that was a double up into the Meowscarada, which I would assume that it is because this Gengar has Sludge Bomb.
Right.
And honestly, like, pretty unfortunate. This Trick Room is really good for Kyogre to have because now you can, again, just Body Press the King Gambit again. You can go for Flower Trick or whatever you want into the Gengar to get rid of it. But Gengar's going to switch out knowing that it is very threatened.
Is indeed, and we see the Rotom switched in here for Scarlet. It's made a lot of use in the earlier ones. Sucker Punch going into this Meowscarada, not able to take it out. The Body Press will take out this Kingambit. So now it's just up to this Garganasult right here in this Trick Room. Knockoff also firing into that Rotom is going to take off that Citrus Berry, not getting it some critical health back, and that's going to be key here, especially with Rotom in the position that it is. It really wants to be able to survive stuff like that.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like pretty game sealing here because now you can just kind of try and preserve your Meowscarada till Trick Room's over and just Flower Trick the Rotom because again, Terastallization is no longer available for Scarlet. Just go for a Salt Cure into the Gengar, go for a Salt Cure into the Rotom while Trick Room's still up. Maybe Terastallize it into something like a Grass type so that it cannot die to like Hydro Pump or Thunderbolt. But yeah, it looks like game's pretty sealed up through my eyes. I don't know what you can kind of do to get yourself back into it.
Yeah, I think we actually even saw the forfeit here for game one, so it looks like it's going to end up going to Kyogre here, which is, really interesting. It's really interesting, one, to see how many tricks Meowscarada exactly has up its sleeve, because that Trick Room, I mean, that's absolutely clutch. Meowscarada typically, again, not a Mon that really thrives in Trick Room, but can be great for setting it up, especially if you're not expecting it, allowing Garganacl to just, absolutely a dominant performance by that Garganacl and just get that speed priority that it needs. It has access to spread moves like Rock Slide, even Earthquake, so it can do a lot of damage to the other side of the field, especially in the Trick Room. Yeah,
and honestly, like if that Gengar was going for a finishing blow into the Meowscarada, that Paraturn was pretty big.
Yeah.
Meowscarada is a grass type, so if it was a Sludge Bomb, it's not a particularly bulky Pokemon. We saw just a neutral Iron Head do a large amount of damage. So I think Sludge Bomb would have just picked it off if it wasn't Focus Sash or anything like that. And then potentially you have an Iron Head going into the Garganacl, maybe getting something like a Flinch. Those little RNG turns can really throw things a lot in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, even the finishing touch there with the Meowscarada taking off that Citrus Berry, especially when that Rotom is in a position where it wants to be able to survive everything that's coming towards it. It needs that Citrus Berry. That just really put the nail in the coffin here. But it looks like we're about to switch into round 2 here. We're at Team Preview. So we'll go ahead and take a look at what's some potential threats here? Also, good to mention the Annihilate in that last match. I mean, that Annihilate did a lot of the work there in the beginning, and being able to preserve that in the back, potentially to take out that Gengar later, I think was absolutely critical. And with that, we will have work our way into game 2 of this finals match here, going for 3rd and 4th place. Scarlet VGC versus KyogreSG. Absolutely incredible matchup here, one that you can have asked for. And we see Garganacl and Grimmsnarl coming out. It looks like Gengar and Talonflame for Scarlet, a familiar lead from what we saw last time.
Yeah, leading the Garganacl this turn, potentially just wanting to go for something like Salt Cure into the Talonflame, do as much damage as possible, get that consistent chip going. If it's not burned, Talonflame is 4 times weak to rock, so that's going to do a lot. You could also set it up on the Gengar, get rid of the Sash. Maybe you want to set up some screens, play this game a little bit slower, and try to kind of like sweep at the end, based on what you saw Scarlet bring last time. But, you know, important things to remember is that Talonflame threatens Will-O-Wisp, Gengar threatens Taunts. A lot can be done with these two, even though that their offensive options aren't really great into what's on the screen in front of them.
Right, exactly. And we see now Terastallization going off here. The Grimmsnarl going to Terastallize into a Steel type, something we have yet to see. Very, very interesting pick here. And looks like that is going to be for Kyogre. That's Brave Bird after going off right there with that priority. It's not going to do too much against the Steel type Grimmsnarl here.
That's going to do even less.
And there we go. The Spirit Break firing off into Gengar. It's going to not do too much, but it is a critical special attack drop here. Salt Cure going to go off into the Talonflame. Of course, does not like those rock type moves, and the Salt Cure should be enough to take out this Talonflame in just one shot.
Yeah, Grimmsnarl, who is almost exclusively a support Pokemon, not really what you think of when you want to Terastallize. Really great use of the mechanic defensively there. You take the Brave Bird, you are immune to the Sludge Bomb, and now they were able to get a knockout onto the Talonflame and also a break on the Focus Sash with the Gengar. That's a pretty big turn. Now you're offered things like Reflect and trying to get Salt Cures onto the Gallade, or maybe even just protecting and Thunder Waving the Gengar so that your Annihilate can come back in, because now Tailwind has been taken off the table for your opponent.
Exactly. Now you don't have speed priority. They don't have to worry about that as much. And, you know, you also have that Meowscarada that could possibly be in the back, flip things over in a Trick Room.
Yeah, I'm really liking the board state from Kyogre's side of the field, but you know what? There's still a lot that can happen. Garganacl is still weak to fighting, and now actually Grimmsnarl is too. So
yeah,
you know, there's
true.
things can still shift around quite a lot, and there's always a chance to crit things.
Right. There's the Reflect coming up from Grimmsnarl. They're going to make it a little bit better against those physical type moves. Sacred Sword coming from that Glade is going to take out that Grimmsnarl. So now Terastallization off the field for Kyogre in just one shot. That sharp Sacred Sword really, really showing how effective it can possibly be here. A little bit of HP chip here from that Life Orb damage as the Salt Cure comes off of Garganacl into Glade. Going to do that DOT, and it's something it definitely does not like, especially of Mon as you know, HP deficient as Glade is.
I constantly forget that Sharpness is an ability and that Glade has it. So
yeah,
I've been hit by many Glade moves, and I'm like, why is that doing so much?
It got that buff.
It got that buff.
That Sacred Sword is also a big threat to this Meowscarada as well. Don't know again if this is Focus Sashed or not. But it does. We've seen this movie before, right? This has the big potential for that Trick Room, and putting that Garganacl in a position where it can just absolutely train wreck everything on the other side of the field. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah, we didn't get to see if it was Focus Sash last game, so it could be actually Protect, knowing that Meowscarada is the big target this turn.
Oh, the Sludge Bomb's gonna go into the protected Meowscarada. Let's see what the Glade goes for here. Glade gonna go for the Sacred Sword. Looks like it's also going into that Meowscarada, so a double the Protect here really, really paying off for Kyogre. Let's see what Garganacl has. A Salt Cure, just gonna try to see what they can do. A little bit more damage over time for both of these Pokemon, and now the clock is really ticking if you're Scarlet.
Yeah, the Salt Cure is a really, really good move. It continues to do this chip damage until the Pokemon switches out. That means that if Garganacl goes down, Salt Cure will still happen. 10 turns from now, if everyone's still on the field, Salt Cure will still be happening. Gengar's now also really in Sucker Punch range.
Yeah.
If the Meowscarada had it, which means if you switch out and you just get another Salt Cure into that for like the Rotom that potentially comes in, you're still getting the same chip and at high value.
Ooh, and we see the Sludge Bomb going off for Gengar. Flower Trick going to go into the Glade. It is protected, though. Meowscarada able to hang in there with just a sliver of HP. Salt Cure going to go off again into that Gengar, and that will be enough to take that Gengar out. But the Cursed Body means that that will be the last Salt Cure coming out of this Garganacl, at least until it can work off that those Cursed Bodies with possibly, I think they still have a mon that they could pull back in there. So it's going to be an interesting position. Both players now. Well, I mean, Scarlet at this point doesn't have a chance to actually withdraw those things. So that Salt Cure damage is going to keep on happening. The clock is really, really ticking in that department.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that's a very impressive read, calling out the going for the Gallade instead of the Gengar.
Yeah,
and getting that last Sludge Bomb off. Really, really good call. It's still looking kind of rough because Meowscarada can still threaten that that Flower Trick to KO the Gallade this turn. You know, it'd be nice to go for like a Sacred Sword into the Garganacl and just a Thunderbolt into the Meowscarada with your Rotom, but it may just be like pressuring too much damage right now. Also, Garganacl did get the Salt Cured disabled for this turn, so it's not an option, but they can just switch out into whatever the last remaining Pokemon they have is.
Very true. I can always get that back that way, and that Salt Cure is shown to be very viable for it so far. Protect going to go off on both Meowscarada and Gallade. Both players keeping something on the field for both these turns, even with their sliver of HP that they have left. That Thunderbolt going to go into that protected Meowscarada as the Body Press fires off into this Gallade. Very interesting to see here. Is the Body Press able to go through the Protect? Was it not protected? Did I miss something?
No, it failed the double Protect. It went for
that's what it was. Gotcha.
Yeah. And also, very respectable play. Like, honestly, trying to just, like, get the Protect and go for the KO onto the Meowscarada. That very respectable play. And also good call on the opponent to protect the Meowscarada and recognize that that was their best bet. Potentially Garganacl with a Reflect Up is out of range of a Sacred Sword, which is why they felt confident making that move. So now it's kind of looking like it's all up to Rotom to kind of clutch this game out.
And we've seen Scarlet using this Rotom before, the Terrestrialization on it, making it a pure electric type and immune to any kind of other weaknesses. But that Flower Trick still doing a lot with that critical hit. Citrus Berry not knocked off this time. Going to put it back up in about 50% of its health, just a little bit shy of that. Thunderbolt boosted with that Terrestrialization should be enough to take out this Meowscarada that it's going into here. But a very interesting positioning here, especially with that Garganacl still having advantages with that Salt Cure. And we see a big Sacred Sword coming off this Glade. It is not enough to take out the Garganacl, but it is enough to get a little bit of chip from that Rocky Helmet and the Life Orb. So now it is up to the Rotom against the world here as this Body Press fires off into it, able to survive with just 14 HP. But that Garganacl is looking very, very scary to this Rotom right now.
Yeah. Both of these Pokemon have 100% accurate moves. Yeah. The Rotom's just way too low. You could Thunderbolt the Garganacl, you could Hydro Pump the Annihilate, even if it's those moves would get the KO. It's just not enough because the other one will pick off the Rotom. You'd have to hope for your opponent to throw and just protect one for no reason. But, you know, recognizing that that was kind of the end of the game, it's a forfeit.
And that will be it for our championship match. It looks like the third place match will be going to KyogreSG. I don't know if we have the results on our championship match just yet. But what a tournament. I mean, we've got to see some crazy things out there. We saw water type Garchomp for one. We saw a lot of the Scarlet utilizing that Terrestrialization on the Talonflame for a priority Brave Bird that can hit before Reflect. What was the craziest thing you saw?
Look, I can't really fake my way and say I was watching this whole tournament. I've been at work the past few days, so the last two matches are what I saw, and they were really good matches. I'm glad that I saw them. They were really well played and really interesting stuff. I just love seeing a shiny Dondozo, to be perfectly honest.
Dondozo really, really showcasing what it can do here. I mean, I think, again, I don't know if we have the results just yet for the first place matches, but we do know that Dondozo made it to that championship round. Again, it was doing well in other tournaments that we've seen this weekend. So for everybody out there that says that Dondozo isn't something that you're going to see winning tournaments, think again.
Mm-hmm. It's a threat. It's out there. It can win.
It absolutely can. It absolutely can. Well, that will do it for us tonight. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Rollercoaster, for joining me. If you want any more information on us, you can always hit those exclamation points in the chat for Roos Bane, Rollercoaster, all the rest of us. And I think that will do it for us. Thank you so much from the casters here. And I think we have a word from Wide before we head out.
All right, I have muted the casters. All right, so everybody got muted. All right, so first off, thank you all for hanging out for this tournament. Let me leave this really quick. Seriously, thank you all so much for coming out to the tournament. I do really appreciate each and every one of you, man. It was an absolute blast the last 2 days being able to host this tournament for everybody and just overall have an absolutely amazing time. These matches were insane. We got to see some really cool people play in this tournament. From some world champions, I believe Paul Ruse was in here. You have players like Joe UX9. We had players like ScarletSkill. I mean, dude, the list of like talent in here was crazy, and it was a pleasure to watch all these people do what they do best, which is just play Pokemon and make some insane plays. And we saw a ton of it. So big shout out to all the players, man. I cannot thank all of you enough.